Good morning and welcome to 3 Minutes on Markets and Money. I'm your host, Lance Roberts. I want to pick up on a conversation we had yesterday. First, let's talk about the S&P. And again, the sell-off yesterday unfortunately kept the money flow buy signal from triggering, and it didn't occur yesterday, and it won't occur today if the markets finish down today. We are close to turning that money flow indicator up. Money flows do continue to deteriorate, which does suggest downside pressure on stocks right now. And importantly, because of the signal still in place, we have not broken out of this consolidation range. We just remain kind of stuck here in the S&P, and the differentials between the growth trades and this kind of reflation trade idea, the inflation trades, have really just been balancing the index out at this point, not really making much of an advance. But yesterday I made a note that I said, well, the NASDAQ is more oversold than the S&P. I got a few comments yesterday saying the NASDAQ's not oversold at all. Well, that's not exactly what I meant, and this is the point I wanted to refresh a little bit today. On a daily basis, and again, this is short term, the NASDAQ sell signal is actually much more deeply oversold on both the MACD and the money flow indicator than the S&P. Now, does this mean that there's no more downside risk to the NASDAQ? Of course not. But typically, when these indicators get this oversold, and the last time we had this type of oversold indication was here back in really early March, it led to a significant outperformance of the NASDAQ versus the S&P. We're now back into that range that we saw previously. So on that standpoint, yes, we are a little bit more oversold on this point, speaking specifically about the money flow indicator. When we're talking about being overbought or oversold, now that's a little bit of a different story. So when we use our daily overbought indications on the S&P 500, we are still fairly overbought on the S&P 500, and that's because of the lack of the correction in that index, right? The index on the S&P has just been going sideways. However, when we take a look at the NASDAQ, we've had a much bigger sell-off in the market, and no, we're not completely oversold here yet on a short-term basis on the NASDAQ, but we're much more oversold currently short-term versus the S&P 500. So again, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have an immediate run in the markets, but there's an opportunity here where there's a likely outcome that over the course of the next couple of months, we may see the NASDAQ stocks begin to outperform the S&P. Now, does that mean that there's going to be a massive up run in the big FANG stocks? Maybe. But it also just may be the fact that they stop going down as much as the rest of the market, and we begin to play a catch-up in performance in that direction as well. But moving out to a longer-term basis and looking at the NASDAQ, again, still on a buy signal here in terms of a weekly basis, and that gives support to the NASDAQ here short-term, but there is some risk down to those previous lows. So again, a little bit more downside the market, certainly well within the context of what we could see in this market very short-term, particularly given the fact that we're not near overbought conditions on the money flow indicator. But when we take a look at longer term indications of overbought, yes, and this is back to the point that we were talking about yesterday, overbought long term, we're taking a look at a monthly indicator of overbought conditions, yes. The NASDAQ is still overbought, but again, this isn't a great short-term indicator because this is a much more longer-term picture, and this suggests that yes, eventually we'll have a much bigger decline in the NASDAQ and in the markets as a whole, but not necessarily over the next few days, few weeks, or the next month, which is what our shorter-term indicators are suggesting at the moment, is that there may be an opportunity for the NASDAQ to outperform the S&P simply just on a technical basis short-term. I'm your host, Lance Roberts, for 3 Minutes on Markets and Money. We'll see you tomorrow.